book you should read first in Krishna consciousness, then my question is, do you read any books in Krishna consciousness?
There you go.
Do you know how to read? Homeschool ki jai, you know how to read. So the answer to that question, what book should I read, that differs per the person. But nonetheless, there is a general recommendation. If you are young people and you are beginning Krishna consciousness up to 10 years of after having been initiated, understand? You may have been born in a devotee family and everything, but up to the point of initiation, that's all preliminary, preparatory work, like preparing to go to college. Then when you go to college, that's when your real studies begin. So if you've been an initiated devotee up to 10 years, anytime in that period, if you think, what book should I read? The answer is Bhagavad-gītā. Because two things, if you ask the question that itself means, you need to read Bhagavad-gītā. There is a higher plane of inspiration where you will feel a natural tendency towards certain literature. Then you won't have to ask, wonder which books I should read, what I should read. You already know. That means that the stage of sambandha, that is more or less been substantially dealt with. And you have the foundation. But when asking, what book should I read? Well, that may indicate that the foundation is not complete. So Bhagavad-gītā is a foundational literature in Krishna consciousness. That is not to say that it is just for the beginners, but it gives us our foundation. When entering any big building, generally you come in at the ground floor. Even if your apartment is on the top, you enter through the ground floor and you go up. Generally. So, Bhagavad-gītā gives us the foundation. Also, if you read Bhagavad-gītā, and another important book along with Bhagavad-gītā is Śrīla Īśopaniṣad. In the beginning, we're in the marginal stage of conscious development. Marginal. That means we have a conscious interest in matter also, in the material world. And it's not unnatural since we're surrounded by matter from the moment we wake up till the moment we go to sleep, and all during our sleep, we're surrounded by matter. You wake up, you may have a stiff neck. There are so many things. Immediately, the material energy is there. Even you don't have to strive for it. It's there because this is the material world. Spiritual life requires striving for. The spiritual world is actually beyond this world. We're lost travelers in our eternal existence, wandering in material life. So, when we read Bhagavad-gītā, that will give us, and Īśopaniṣad, these two books particularly, that will give us the inspiration and the determination to cross over the ocean of material existence. And the ocean of material existence is summarized in 4 words. You can ask any learned person. We used to have some questions we used to like to ask the learned, generally we were talking with students in college. We didn't talk so much with the professors. But we could ask the learned professors, well, what 4 words sum up the whole history and the whole universe? Many things, but Śrīla Prabhupāda would tell you in a second. Old age, birth, death, and disease. This is prevalent in every species of life, from the beginning of time to now, from every planet down, higher to the lower, length and breadth, width, everything. This sums it up. This is going on. There once was a friend, before coming in Krishna consciousness, a friend of mine, we were traveling yogis, so to speak. We had gone to Mexico to live in the jungles. And we'd gone to this place called Yelapa. It's near Puerto Vallarta. To get to it, we had to go over the mountains from Guadalajara. That's the story where my horse fell off a cliff and we got lost in the jungle and all these horrific things happened. Anyway, we finally got there. And just, actually it was just after that. We had been discussing chanting Hare Krishna, so many things. Anyway, down there in Mexico, we split up. And my friend went to Mexico City. And in Mexico City, he wrote Śrīla Prabhupāda a letter. He had a card. We each had a card, a mantra card from the Los Angeles temple, La Cienega, street address. So he decided to write Prabhupada a letter. And that time, Prabhupada was called Swamiji. So he wrote a letter, Dear Swamiji. He told me about his letter. Actually, I think he wrote the letter when I was there. But whatever, he told me about it later. The letter said, Dear Swamiji, I am in search of God, and I am traveling in the world in search of truth, in search of God. So if there's any advice that you can give to me, that will be helpful. And he mailed that letter, he mailed that letter from Mexico City, and his return address was General Delivery, Mexico City. And Mexico City is the biggest, most populated city in the world. And it's possibly one of the most chaotic cities in the world, too. Then he went off traveling in the southern, I don't know, Yucatan Peninsula, wherever he was, somewhere down in southern Mexico. And about a month and a half later, he came back to Mexico City, and he went to the General Post Office, and he went in and he asked the person in Spanish, any letter for Chris, something his name was. And sure enough, there was a letter there from Śrīla Prabhupāda waiting for him. So he read it, and the letter said, because he showed me the letter later, it said, Dear Chris, received your letter. It said, it is nice that you are in search of truth, in search of God. But wherever you go in the world, people are doing the same thing in different cultural dresses and in different languages. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So if you want to know what is God, please come here to our center in La Cienega Boulevard. So this was a personal invitation from Śrīla Prabhupada. So then he from there, from Mexico City, he went to Los Angeles in the temple. So what was my point? So, what was the point? Oh, these four things will sum up material life. Old age, birth, death, disease, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, these type of things. Another question we used to ask, what are the 6 symptoms of life? And even many biologists struggle to come up with the 6 basic symptoms that all things living share. They're birth, I have trouble remembering them now, birth, growth, maintenance, reproduction, dwindling, and death. Whether it's a rose or an elephant, it has its birth. From a seed or from a womb or from an egg, whatever, it has its birth. Then it grows. Then it stays for some time. Every species, right down to an amoeba, has some reproductive scheme, be it flower way, or elephant way, or whale, or amoeba. Everything has a way of reproducing its species. Then everything dwindles, and everything vanishes. These are the 6 symptoms of material existence which all of us share in every species. But mostly, these materialists, although they are observing right down to the B12 molecule or below, atomic particles, the common sense level of knowledge often escapes them. You don't have to be a scientist to know it's going to rain. You just have to be able to read the weather in the sky. Yesterday we were walking. I told Arjuna, you see the grass is wet. That means it will not rain, at least till late afternoon, if it will rain at all. But if the grass is dry, its chances of raining are more. When the wind blows all the time, but when wind blows with rain, the leaves roll over. They show up upside down in the trees. You ever notice that? If the wind is just blowing, that's one thing, it goes all over. But when wind is coming that's got rain behind it, the leaves roll over. So in the old days, it's like the barometer, it's perfect. Cow falls over, there was an earthquake. Cow tail's dry, it's fair. Cow's frozen, it's cold. They used to have a saying, I don't need a weatherman to tell me it's going to rain, or something like that. used to have something like that. But now, of course, so, but the example is that common sense knowledge is quite profound, you see. Just like I thought about how many headache pills are sold in this country for the common headache. But how many people have just been told, drink more water? Nobody. Nobody. You'd think there'd be announcements on television. Headache sufferers, first try this. Drink more water. Like Arjuna when he was here. His habit, he only drinks a cup of water every few days. So he started drinking more water, and even his cough started going away. I have that habit too. I'll forget to drink water. I have to remember to drink water. I don't ever feel thirsty. So, but it's a common sense. It's a common kitchen knowledge. Turmeric reduces mucus. If you have cold, put turmeric in your nose. It reduces the mucus. These are kitchen knowledge, kitchen medicine. You know, they belong to the common sense world, the commoner's world. So, Krishna consciousness is the ultimate common sense, the common sense observer. He begins to observe a balance in nature and ultimately the presence of a supreme overseer to the world. Whereas the scientific pursuit of knowledge, that minute detail, there it seems that the vision of an overseer and controller is not so easily detectable to them. Over-intelligent, you see. Too much into the issue, you see. Too much complicating the issue. At any rate, I'm getting lost in my explanation here this morning. So back, yes. So in this material world, so much matter surrounds us. So we have to make an endeavor towards spiritual life. We have to make an endeavor, and for all it's worth, the colleges, universities, newspapers, journals, and the volumes of books in libraries that exist don't really amount to even the first and second chapters of Bhagavad-gītā. The totality of the Bible amounts to a meager portion of the Bhagavad-gītā, actually. And if you don't believe it, just make a comparative study. Now, I showed you boys the other day when we were sitting here, I just grabbed the Bible and showed you where it says to chant the holy name of God all day long. Didn't I? It's Psalms 113, 1 and 3. It says, praise ye the Lord, praise ye the name of the Lord, from the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. Then you tell any Christian, what time did you get up this morning? And it's always way after sunrise. But it says, from the rising of the sun, means you got to be there. You got to be there to meet the sun with the holy name. And all day long. Not lock the church and go away. All day long. And you just keep going through the Bible, one thing after the other, after the other. On one side, they have no eyes to see it, and in seeing it, they don't know what it means, and so forth and so forth. So, therefore, our recommendation is read Bhagavad-gītā. Now, who is the older student? He'll also read Bhagavad-gītā. He'll also read Bhagavad-gītā. And preaching means Bhagavad-gītā. I said this somewhere a few weeks ago. And some older devotee tried to make preaching Bhagavatam. Told her to say Bhagavatam, and then of course Bhagavatam, then 10th canto, then Līlā is what we should preach, is the progression. And I said, no, mistake. Bhagavatam is for the devotees. Bhagavad-gītā is for preaching. And I said, and the practical example is Śrīla Prabhupāda. This movement has never been spread ever in the world like it was at that time. Even now, with many groups and so many different things going on, everyone's still in a struggling position, and there are not many things to boast about, even in those groups that are getting a lot of devotee participation. Śrīla Prabhupada showed a tremendous success, and he based his preaching on Bhagavad-gītā. Because Bhagavad-gītā will give the conditioned soul a hope. It will give them a glimpse of their eternal life in a perspective that is enthusing and not misleading. And they will get the determination to cross over the ocean of material suffering. They will get that determination. They will get that hope from Bhagavad-gītā. So, then, for the older devotees, they ask me, what books should I read? So that question varies, but it varies a lot more than the answer for the younger devotees. You follow what I'm saying up to this point? So there are many books for the older devotees. But usually when an older devotee asks that question, it means really there's been a gap somewhere. Either they weren't around, present, performing devotional service, or they were lax in the reading and just some big space went by and they didn't really keep up with what was going on. So therefore they went, well, what should I read next? And there are many books that they should read next. And this is one of them. And this has been around here for a long time, and I don't know how many of the older devotees that actually read this. Bhajana Rahasya. It's written by Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura. And it has a purport by, it has an introduction by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta. And yeah, I believe there's some of the purport by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta also. This is not something that one necessarily read every day. Nonetheless, one should read this, and there's no harm in reading it every day. Bhajana Rahasya is an explanation of the Maha Mantra in terms of Krishna's Līlā, connected to and reference to the Shikshastakam prayers, and linked to the 9 developmental stages of devotion, beginning with Shraddha, concluding in Prema. So it's all linked together, like 4 things. They're linked, they're interlinked. And it gives you an expectation, what to expect. A little bit, what to expect. It gives you an understanding. It is said that Krishna is non-different than his name. Krishna's Līlā is non-different than his name. And here in Bhajana Rahasya, Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura tells you which part of Krishna's Līlā corresponds to which part of his name in the Maha Mantra. He also informs us which prayer of Mahaprabhu is linked to which utterance of the name of Krishna in the Maha Mantra. It's a little detailed, but it's not just detail, like detailed knowledge. He's not writing this from a plane of technical knowledge. He's writing this from a plane of realization. So, by reading that, we may have a glimpse of that realization of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. So this is one of the books that a devotee, senior devotee should read. And other books for the senior devotees, particularly Caitanya-caritāmṛta. This can also be read by who reads Bhagavad-gītā. But before reading Caitanya-caritāmṛta, you should read Srimad Bhagavatam, especially Canto 1 and Canto 2. Canto 1 and Canto 2. And this again, like Bhagavad-gītā, will give you, you will find in there the missing information of the world. What brings you to understand your eternal life. And again, reinforcing your determination with this human form of life to go back to home, back to Godhead. This you'll find very strong in Srimad Bhagavatam, Cantos 1 and Cantos 2. Caitanya-caritāmṛta is sweet nectar. I sometimes say, anyway, if you can't read anything, at least read Caitanya-caritāmṛta. I don't say, well, if you can't read anything, read Bhagavad-gītā. You'd think that someone would say, well, if you can't do anything, at least get the first thing right. But if you can't read anything, you don't like to read, then read Caitanya-caritāmṛta, because in Caitanya-caritāmṛta you get everything. You get Bhagavad-gītā, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhajana Rahasya, you get everything. It is the most important scripture of the Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavas, Caitanya-caritāmṛta. So, but all the younger children, students, Bhagavad-gītā and Īśopaniṣad. These three things, when you have that inspiration to read, you should read there, study there, learn some slokas there, struggle along with the Sanskrit, learn some slokas, learn that book very thoroughly, and you will see the effect that it has within you. And if you're progressive, then Srimad Bhagavatam. You follow? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any questions? Question. What book should I read?
In Srimad Bhagavatam, should we read the Sanskrit?
Generally I don't. I didn't take an interest in the Sanskrit until about 3 years ago, when I found that I had to deal with people who had hid their rascalism inside the Sanskrit and were shouting back at us from there, so to speak, you see. It's just like, you may never go into the forest, but if your cat's lost and it's gone in, then you have to enter. So I'm not much for heavy book study. Never have been, probably never will be. I'm not a studier. I have a good sense for hearing. I like to hear and I pay attention very well in hearing, things like that. Observing. But I'm not a big reader, and I'm really bad at memorizing. I used to have maybe, if I squeezed every drop of my memory, I could memorize 100 slokas or something. Whereas Vishnu Maharaj, it's several thousand. Trivara Maharaj, it's like 5,000. Ravina Maharaj might be 10,000 or something. I'm like in the category of 10 to 25 now. So I don't have a capacity of memory. But when I read, and generally I don't. Because first it's a foreign language, you don't know what it says, you see. But then if you want to do a little deeper study, I like sometimes to read Caitanya-caritāmṛta, and I'll read like first 10 slokas in Bengali, something like that. And then, what to do? I speak English. I don't speak Bengali. It's nice, it's sweet, but I don't speak Bengali. So, another way to read is this. Don't always read. And this is like, what did you say? Some people don't always read the verse and the purport. And the fact is, when you do that all the time, you lose thought of the flow of what's going on. And many of the purports are repetitive also. So when you want to do when you read a chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā, read the English through of just the verses first, right? Then come back to the first one, read it again and read the purport. Then the second and the purport, and go through it again. And that way you get the conversation. What's going on here? There's a conversation going on in Bhagavad-gītā. They're not just random verses of knowledge, just numbered 1 to 54. It's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. You see, so sometimes that helps the interest, especially in Bhagavatam. It's a story. Each chapter is usually a story. Something's going on. Somebody's telling somebody something that happened. And sometimes if you just go verse to verse, devotees will be in a chapter for a whole month and then ask, what's the chapter about? And it's like, well, they can know something of the knowledge of the chapter. They don't have any idea what's the storyline, so to speak. Well, that also helps us to hold our interest, knowing what's going on. You see. So, then if you have more interest and capacity, and then the Sanskrit is there. It is also written for us, as I mentioned the other day. Prabhupada told, I've written these books for you. That is also for you, and it is also purifying to chant the Sanskrit. But that's usually just done in the class. Everybody goes to read, and you ask me, I just tell you the truth. I go to read, I just read the English. Very rarely then I'll read the slokas. Depends. After a long period of time, it becomes a balanced mix. Sometimes I'll read the slokas and just chant just the Sanskrit for a full chapter of Bhagavad-gītā or Bhagavatam or something, or Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Sometimes only the English, and sometimes both, you see. But probably if you're not reading much, you might as well stick with your own language and get the maximum out of your reading time, and that would be to stick with the English. Sudhir Goswami travels with Follow the Angels. in Russia. It's been his book for the last 6 months. He gives class from Fall of the Angels. Huh?
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. I said, Maharaj, do you appreciate the book? And he had so much appreciation. That's good, because he started the whole thing. He made the first book of Śrīla Prabhupāda in the Western world. And he made the first. He actually set a new standard for book publishing in the devotee realm. Making the books a little more gorgeous. The first books were plain and simple. Then came Loving Search for the Lost Servant. No one had ever seen a book in Krishna consciousness laid out like that. Usually they're just put the BBT paintings in the front of the book, 10 of them in a row, and then just do the book. There was no design. There was nothing like that, hardly at all. And this had design, So it was like, and it had those subtitles. These things already existed, actually. Mm-hmm. He didn't even invent those designs. We have the books that he copied. He just copied them, which is smart. Why reinvent the wheel? Some people have worked on this for 20 years or something. There's so many designs. That's what designers do. They design one book, they look at 20 books, and they take this idea. And every once in a while, somebody originates an original design idea, which is usually just a combination of two old ones. This is also going on in the design world. Anyway, the subtitles. We didn't have that in any of our books. And now that's just become, almost a must-be standard in many places. All over the world, devotees nowadays, when they'll publish a spiritual book, it's common to see the subtitles, which helps the reader locate things and understand the next 2 or 3 paragraphs are on this origin of Jiva or Guru Tattva, whatever it is, subtitles. That was also introduced by him in Śrīla Prabhupāda's book.
It makes it really readable.
Yeah, it was a nice thing. I appreciated that he appreciated our book. He's the one who did the design on the Sarasvatī Ṭhākura book, also the big Prabhupada book. He did that. So, he also designed the new golden volcano. So he's pretty good in that. When we met together recently and we were discussing videos, he was really enthused by the video project, saw its potential and such things. It was nice. There is a thing, the Līlā of Krishna and Kartik. Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura wrote a song. If Madhava Maharaj was here, he'd show us where it is. We have it. It's not in our songbook, but we have it. And in Kartik, then Sarasvatī Ṭhākura recommended his disciples in Kartik month in Vrindavan, the meditations should be according to the eightfold pastimes of Krishna known as Astakaliya Līlā. And so this song is sung throughout the day at different intervals. And Sarasvatī Ṭhākura's method was to enter the Līlā of Krishna through the name, with the holy name. The remembrance of Krishna's Līlā will also be done with the holy name. So Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura had written one song, one appropriate song, and this is the standard song that is sung in Kartik since his time till now. So we also have that song. We were singing that last year in Kartik in Vrindavan. So also this Bhajana Rahasya is like that. It explains and gives us some glimpse into the Līlā of Krishna via the holy name. And this is the method that Mahaprabhu recommended. Because this method will purify us along the way. But the Ras Vichar section, who are given to just describing the Līlā, they run the risk of making offense and mistakes. They run the risk of making mistakes. And Krishna's Līlā is also infinite. It's changing all the time. Well, whatever those changes are, it's updated with the name, the holy name. You see, you're not running any old software. You see, oh, I made a mistake. It wasn't such. It was something else. but I've been going on with that meditation for a long time. Well, that could be embarrassing. Like, how many devotees have worshipped basil plants in the early days, thinking they were tulsi plants? Because basil and tulsi are almost identical when they're small. We had the biggest tulsi in the world in Nairobi. She was about 7 feet tall at a time, huge, and she would produce leaves this big, and we used to pack them up and send them to the New York temple. And I was the tulsi gardener, and I put in a lot of hours out there, aching back and sweat, making that tulsi garden. When I found out it was basil, basil became an endangered species in the garden. I just pulled them up and chucked them all out. So, somebody told Śrīla Prabhupāda, basil is Tulsi's cousin. He wrote back and said, we have no interest in Tulsi's cousin. We're not into that extended family. But if you're cooking, then that's another thing. If you're making a pasta or something, then basil may be very nice, but there's no standby, no substitute for Tulsi Puja. Yeah, there was Tulsi Puja. Many places this happened. Before devotees developed an understanding to identify Tulsi and know. And the Hindus also sometimes, they regard basil as a Tulsi. And that it's not right. They'll have a Tulsi, but it will look, it's just a basil. So. But with the holy name of Krishna, of course, we may have misconception. Therefore, don't try to put many things in the mind of what it means, what's supposed to be going on when chanting the holy name. It's like kind of the example trying to get your thumb out of a bowling ball, frantically pulling and struggling, and nothing happens. Just relax and it comes out. So much struggle for self-realization doesn't help at all. Just relax, chant the holy name of Krishna, listen attentively, and follow the rules and regulations. And it's like you can't get the sun to rise any faster than it's destined to rise. It's going to rise, but you just have to be patient. Utsayam nischaya dhirya. First three things are, you must be enthusiastic. Next, you must be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. And the third, you must be determined, because you'll have setbacks. You see, you'll have setbacks. Therefore, determination is necessary. Try it again. Yeah. Nobody succeeds the first time, usually at anything. You ever see these history films on who flew the airplane first and all that? I mean, these people, in one sense, they were clowns. People were standing by laughing at them, howling at them. They're flopping off a runway, boom. First they did it like a bird. He made wings like a bird, and jumped and boom, fell on the ground. Everybody's just... But they had the conception, it can be done. We can fly. And then they went like 10 meters, and that was like a huge thing. And then they flew 100 yards, and that was history. You see? But just think, the first time somebody laughed or they fell on their face, oh, forget this, and they just walk away. Actually, there was a time in Western civilization, if you talked publicly about flying, you could be burned alive. It was something for witches and hobgoblins and ghouls. Of course, as it turned out, the people lighting the matches, they were the ghouls, burning people alive for such a thought. So, you want to take up the Krishna consciousness, cross over the ocean of material suffering, misery, all these things. Well, don't be surprised if you have some setbacks on the way. Therefore, determination. You pick yourself up from wherever you are and you try again. And keep that in your experience. This happened and this went wrong. Oh. So then don't be stupid and just do the same old thing again and again. You see, eating big old loaves of bread at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, with butter all over them. Well, we're not going to see you early in the morning for sure. Just be like opening the eyes of a dead man. You see, so you can eat big loaves of bread and butter, but better you do that, in the middle of the day or in the early evening, not late at night. Things like that, just simple things. If you find something doesn't work, and it gives you a problem, then you avoid that. You see. Sometimes it takes many times to learn a lesson. Nonetheless, determination is required. Enthusiasm first, patience, and determination. These three qualities are necessary for success in spiritual life. Now the mind. Where does the mind come into this whole thing? It's just like your elbow. It's just another part of your body. Don't make your best friend your mind. Your mind is like your dog. You know, don't let him inside. He'll urinate on the furniture. So don't invite your mind to be your best friend. It will never do you justice. It will abuse you. It is said the mind is one's friend or one's enemy. It's like a monkey. You see, don't make a friend of it. Don't make an enemy of it. You see, type of a thing. You see, if the mind is engaged in Krishna service, it is our friend, and if it's not, it becomes our enemy. In any case, every mind is fickle. There isn't a mind in the world that isn't fickle. It's just fickle in various degrees. But as we grow older, even in material life, people learn to get their mind in order, you see. But in youth is the worst time, usually, for the mind, you see. Somewhere between 14 and 18, you discover you have one. This is called manamoya. And you want to make your own decisions, you see. All of a sudden it hits. I got one. And you want your opinion to be heard. And nobody else's opinion is any good anymore. No, it's natural in mind. It's called manamoya. Then here's where we determine whether you have any intelligence. What happens during this stage. Because the mind requires intelligence in order to function properly. Everyone's got a mind, but intelligence is varying. So, intelligence is that which helps us to control the mind. Intelligence is a higher energy. Intelligence. So, intelligence is not so easy to put your finger on. But intelligence is that guiding. See, I'm not very intelligent, so it is that guiding force for the mind. Intelligence. It is that which helps to discriminate between matter and spirit. That is actually intelligence. Intelligence which cannot discriminate what is spiritual, that is only IQ. That is not really intelligence. People are very intelligent materially. They don't recognize what is soul. They don't recognize the existence of God. They are less intelligent. That is called less intelligent. Not real intelligence. According to Sankhya, intelligence is that which allows us to identify matter and spirit, to understand the difference between these things. That is intelligent. Not the ability to fix cars, not the ability to go to the moon, not the ability to play the stock market. That is not actually real intelligence. That is just material. That is one's karma, actually. That is just one's karma. One will get fortune, one will get poverty, one will get success, one will so many things. That is not actually intelligence. Do you follow what I'm saying? Intelligence means the ability to discriminate matter from spirit. And intelligence thrives off the sounds that comes from the class, the kirtan, and by reading the books. That is the food for the spiritual intelligence. It thrives off that. Without that, no one ever discovered the transcendental world on their own, ever. There were some who thought it existed. There have been many, but discovered it and described it. Not even Brahman. Sometimes it's argued that Greek philosophers of different types had Brahman realization, but there's nothing to indicate in their writings that they actually did. You see. But rather they had some sattva-guna, some vague sattva-guna understanding. But a clear understanding of what is Brahman, they did not have. So self-discovery is limited to this world. Real self-discovery means when we hear from those who are self-realized. So the intelligence will develop and become our very useful tool to guide the mind. When the intelligence is fed this sound vibration in relation to Krishna, the holy name, the scriptures, the philosophy, the tattvas, and so forth. What about the belly? Fill it with prasadam. Closed. What about the arm and the leg? Keep it busy, working for Krishna, walking for Krishna, moving for Krishna. The eyes, same thing, use the eyes for Krishna. From the inner side, the mind and intelligence, the outer side, the limbs. Read Bhagavad-gītā, you'll find what you are made out of. There are 11 senses. 5 working, 5 knowledge acquiring, centered around the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence, and you, the soul, are superior to that. But you're surrounded by all these things. Well, Bhagavad-gītā gives us the knowledge to understand what I am, what is the mind, all these different things. The mind goes like this. I have a bad thought, and I think, why I had that bad thought? Well, what was that bad thought? I had that bad thought. That's just like the tar baby. The mind, things move through the air. You wonder why you might think something. Well, if you turn on a radio right here, you'll find out there's so much garbage in the air. It's a wonder that we're not running around screaming. You ever have a radio signal in your teeth and a filling in your teeth? The old types of fillings used to pick up radio waves sometimes. Sometimes in D.C. we used to drive in the speakers in a car, or New York. They pick up the police signal. You have your tape recorder radio on. All of a sudden your speaker just picks up the police signal. You know about that, right? You heard a situation like that. There's sound there, but sometimes people's minds pick up this stuff and they go crazy. They become crazy. So much pollution in the ethereal element. So, if anything is unwholesome, unhealthy, bad, evil enters the mind, don't pay attention to it. Just let it go. You see? It's like if you're walking somewhere and you smell a bad smell, you don't go, what's that bad smell? And stick your nose into it. You just go, hold your breath for a minute and get past it. Unless it's in your house. Then you want to find out what it is and get rid of it. The difference between a devotee and a non-devotee is when the devotee comes in contact with something bad of this world, he feels bad about it. And hopes for that day when he will never be in contact with any evil thing in this world. A materialist, on the other hand, just the opposite. They come in contact with so many lower things, and then they try to relish that. They absorb themselves in that plane. So, any other questions? Time is over. 4 things. There are another 5 things which the world is made out of. Which these 5 things, there's nothing outside of that. Ishwar means Bhagavan or Krishna, God. Jiva, the soul. These are categories. Kala, time. Karma, reaction. And Prakriti, material nature. If someone says, I can name another one, you'll try till the end of time, and you cannot name another one. Intelligence, that is in Prakriti. Prakriti in its minute detail, this is in Bhagavad-gītā. Oh, Super Soul, that is Ishwar. Oh, Bhagavan, that is Ishwar. Oh, Radha Krishna, that is Ishwar. Ishwar, Ishwari. Jiva, Mukta Jiva, Vada Jiva, different types of souls. Kala, time. Even Einstein didn't understand time. Some aspect about time. Time is still the all mysterious thing in this great universe, time. Time is an energy of Krishna. It's called Kala Chakra. So if you want to know everything, then Bhagavad-gītā. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.